This is the Manhwa, how a former pro takes advantage by doing an easy job. Chapters 1 through 20.
Our MC's journey starts with his dream about battling a massive serpent the day before. He swiftly dodges the serpent's tail whip attack, lands a few meters away, smirks, and taunts the serpent by calling it a maggot for its sluggishness. Caught off guard, he is suddenly attacked from behind by the serpent's tail whip and collapses to the ground. The serpent lets out a piercing screech and delivers a damaging blow to his armor. This irritates him since the price of his armor is comparable to that of a starship. In a fit of rage, our MC jumps into the air and launches a flurry of fists in retaliation, but his attack proves to be ineffective against the serpent. He quickly readjusts and draws his blade from its holster, imbuing it with magical power, as he prepares to face the serpent once again. Leaping powerfully towards the serpent, our MC lands multiple cuts on the serpent's body, and precisely slashes through its tail. As he lands toward the ground, our MC's overconfidence gets the better of him, causing him to misstep and stumble off the cliff. Everything abruptly turns pitch black, and in the darkness, he hears footsteps gradually approaching. We see the silhouette of a beautiful woman beside his bed, and our MC assumes this woman is one of his followers, who support the strongest warriors in the universe. Our MC questions why he feels so sleepy and weak, thinking that it is due to the battle he had. The lady approaches closer to the MC's bed, and suddenly leans in to plant a gentle kiss on his forehead. As we see this beautiful woman gazing at our MC, he can't help but think of how beautiful she is, and that it's impolite of him to just stare at her like an object. Without thinking, he reaches out his hand toward her and grabs her closer to him. The MC realizes something is wrong, so he looks down at his hands and sees that he's been turned into a baby. As he looks up, the woman gazing down at him is his mother, and we find out the MC's name is Arel. Arel asks himself if he reincarnated, and a well of emotions overwhelms him. However, his mother misunderstands his crying and assumes he is just hungry. Arel surveys his surroundings and wonders if he's been reincarnated once again. Having kept count of his past lives, he realizes that this is his 101st incarnation. As we catch glimpses of his past lives, we learn that his original incarnation was a Korean man born in Joseon. In that life, he was an ordinary young man burdened by everyday concerns like employment and taxes. I hope you all did yours. That life came to an end when Karkuin summoned him to save another world. As he awoke, he found himself a baby, just as he is now, but with different foreign parents who spoke an unfamiliar language. Thus began his cycle of life and death, with each reincarnation taking him to a new world, sometimes in a different universe, and other times the Murim each giving him a new identity, from a swordsman to a student, a scholar, or even an assassin. Through these experiences, he has become fully adaptable to the cycle. As we pan back to the present, we see Arel's mother feeding him while he ponders his whereabouts. Based on the style of the furniture and the view of the room, Arel assumes that he must be in a medieval fantasy world. Comparing this new fantasy world to his previous life in a futuristic sci-fi world, Arel finds it mediocre. The sci-fi world was an easy place to live with its spotless, advanced environment. But now, he's been sent back into the Dark Ages. But at least, he wasn't born into the slums. Arel realizes he was born into a frugal upper-class family, since they have a maid. Despite being unable to fully understand his mother's words or actions, Arel senses the depth of her love through the tight grip of her hands and the warmth in her gaze. This is a new experience for him, as in his past reincarnations, he never had a mother who loved him unconditionally. There were times in Arel's previous reincarnations when he was abandoned right after he was born, and others when he was just used for labor as a means of making money. But this time he feels a glimmer of hope. Suddenly, the maid calls out Lady Livana, revealing his mother's name. She offers to hold the baby prince, recognizing that Lady Livana must be tired. Lady Livana's expression turns somber upon hearing the word prince, and she questions whether others will truly recognize her baby as royalty. She addresses the maid by her name, China, and asks for confirmation, but China denies the claim, leaving Lady Livana visibly disappointed. Lady Livana assures China that they are alone, and she can speak freely since she used to be a maid herself and understands the struggles, but China still declines. Lady Livana diverts the conversation and gazes at baby Arel, explaining to China that he is referred to as a prince due to his blood lineage with the king, but in truth, his life is far from glamorous as it is mixed with her own humble blood. Lady Livana asks China if Arel will blame her one day because of this fact, to which China responds with certainty that there's no way he will. Lady Livana is aware of the gossip and whispers of the other concubines and nobles behind their backs, due to Arel's lack of inheritance rights and power because of his lineage. And as Lady Livana tears up, Arel raises his hands toward his mother's face and tries to wipe away her tears. The mood quickly changes as Lady Livana assumes that Arel can understand her, and that he was trying to comfort his mother, but Jenna laughs and says it's impossible. However, Arel heard everything and understood what was said, and he wanted to reassure his mother that he would be fine. Arel doesn't care about being a successor or having followers, so he prefers not to draw attention to himself, not even from powerful nobles. Arel dreams of a life as a prince, detached from his surroundings. As he begins his 101st life, he finds himself in a perfect place where life is easy to live. We get a glimpse inside Arel's dreams as a disinterested young prince, who has the blood of the king and the royal concubines flowing through his veins. He longs for a life free from the power struggles of the elites. Meanwhile, Lady Livana and China watch over him. Lady Livana comments that her child looks so bright and wishes she could protect Ariel's smile, but she doesn't have the power to do so. Upon hearing the word power, Arel wakes up from his dream and thinks to himself that he can understand why she's worried, while he starts sucking his thumb. Arel comments to himself that in a world full of aristocrats where lineage and class are everything, being a prince without succession is like being a scapegoat with no right to the throne. He realizes that he has no power or anything to protect himself, and that there is no future for him. Without anyone to follow him, he feels that he is destined to be taken advantage of and ultimately meet his demise. As Arel reflects on his situation, he thinks to himself that his mother shouldn't have to worry about him because he's confident in his abilities, having been a pro in his past lives as well. 3 months have passed, and we see Lady Livana looking down at the adorable Arel as he sleeps. She says to herself that he has the face of an angel. As Lady Livana keeps staring at Arel, she suddenly puts her hand on top of his hair and wishes that it were like His Majesty's. Suddenly, China informs Lady Livana that her carriage is ready, so she quickly kisses Arel on the cheek and tells him to behave himself as she heads out. After Lady Livana quickly departs and the door slams shut, we see that Arel has been pretending to be asleep, and it must have been convincing as he gives off a small chuckle. Realizing it was louder than expected, he quickly places his hand over his mouth to dampen any noise, just in case China barges in to check what the commotion was. Arel thinks to himself that it's hard work to be that charming, especially as a baby with everyone keeping an eye on him. Arel quickly straightens himself and prepares to do something a baby shouldn't be able to do: cultivate. Arel knows he doesn't have much time, but he needs this power for his future comfort. As the saying goes, no matter which world Arel is in, the strong is the truth. Arel believes that as long as he is strong, no one will dare go against him. As he continues to cultivate, Arel thinks about his past lives and how he didn't spend them in vain, especially the method he created himself that would allow him to strengthen himself even in a baby's body: the origin creation Qigong technique, which his 30th reincarnation had founded. The origin creation Qigong technique is a divine method that allows Arel to train both his innate Qi and origin Qi at the same time, even though he is in the body of a baby, and no one can detect his training. Arel calculates he'll have 60 years worth of inner Qi at 10 and 180 at 20 with the origin creation Qigong technique. After building up enough chi and getting past the initial stages of cultivation, he won't need to focus as much and can even practice while in China's arms. Arel accelerates his cultivation by utilizing electrical stimulation of the body's energy and nerves to gradually move the accumulated chi to his brain and frontal lobe. As the chi expands throughout Arel's body, an intense heat overwhelms his head, causing him to sweat profusely and display signs of pain. Arel senses his energy reaching its maximum, and he screams in agony as he tries not to lose control. As China hears the scream, she rushes to His Highness's chamber, only to find Arel still asleep in his crib. Wondering if Arel might need a diaper change, Arel clenches his bedsheet anxiously, concerned that any touch from China could cause his accumulated energy to dissipate. However, as China approaches him and begins sniffing, checking if he needs a diaper change, she smells nothing. Arel's face shows a sign of relief. As China gets back up and walks to the door, she mutters that His Highness must have had a nightmare or something. As Arel lies in his crib, his energy leaks and turns him into a thermal power plant. Despite attempts to contain it, the thought of lethal heat lingers, leaving him uncertain of his body's endurance. With his fists clenched, Arel summons the courage to endure the overwhelming chi. Arel refuses to live a life at anyone's mercy, even if it means risking everything. He uses the origin creation Qigong technique to become a powerful prince and achieve a comfortable life. Outside, China hears another scream from Arel's room. Barging into Arel's bedroom, China sees a sweaty Arel but assumes he's sleeping well, suggesting an herbal bath before leaving. Arel stands on his bed, having gone through prefrontal lobe hyperevolution and appearing perfectly fine. After the bath, China holds Arel in her arms and observes his normal movements and good condition, feeling relieved by Arel's good mood. Arel thinks to himself that China likely has no affinity with mana at all, as he uses his awakened frontal lobes to detect and absorb mana in the atmosphere, getting stronger just by eating, sleeping, and idling around. Arel giggles with happiness, anticipating that he'll have accumulated much inner chi after 3 years, and fewer than 10 people could kill him by the time he's 10. Cheetah wonders what he's looking at, but enjoys seeing him smile. Arel is becoming more powerful, and eagerly awaits the day when he can live idly as a prince. A few days later, we see Arel crawling, and it's only been 5 months since he was born. Growing faster than his peers, thanks to the origin creation Qigong technique's effects on his physical abilities and inner chi. He is accumulating inner chi automatically every day and hopes to levitate once he builds up enough. Lady Livana picks him up, admiring how adorable he looks while playing by himself. She then tells him that she has brought something that he might like. Arel's mother gives him a rattle, but he is unsure how to react. He puts on a happy act to please her, and she becomes ecstatic, thinking he really likes it. Arel acknowledges that his reaction is appropriate, despite his disbelief. China comments that His Highness's reaction is perfect, and Arel's mother agrees, stating that she knew he would like it. She promises to play with him more often, and wonders who he takes after to be so lovely. Arel thinks to himself that he obviously takes after his mother. Arel enjoys being adored in his childhood and says he will cherish it this time. But suddenly he feels hungry and makes a face expressing his hunger to his mom and China. While Lady Livana assumes he is bored, China realizes he is hungry. They then sit down, and as China feeds Arel, Lady Livana mentions not seeing Anna around lately. China hesitantly reveals that Anna quit yesterday. Lady Livana simply responds with, "I see," remarking on Anna's bright and smart qualities, while China notes that it couldn't be helped due to the smaller budget for maintaining the palace this year, making it difficult to pay Anna. Upon overhearing China and his mother's conversation, Arel recalls the maids discussing the need to cut down Lady Livana's food portions due to the low budget. Though they also had to consider nutrition, Arel initially believed they were simply complaining. Arel's mother mentions that they should be grateful they are not starving, and China adds that at least they do not have to decrease the number of soldiers. Arel realizes that despite his mother giving birth to a prince, her background as a maid remains an issue. They discuss the problem of winter, and the difficulty of self-sufficiency with the prince in their care. Arel thinks to himself that he wouldn't freeze to death since he is a prince, but now he is unsure. When China asks about the king, her mother says he's too busy to meet anyone. Arel realizes that's why his mother is often out of the house, but despite her efforts, she is unable to see the king. Arel finds this situation unacceptable and wonders if his mother is being intentionally isolated. He believes that even if the king is indifferent, his mother should still be granted an audience. Arel starts crying and expresses sympathy for his mother, wanting to hug her. China promptly hands the baby over to the mother. Arel glimmers with hopefulness, eager to help despite being just a baby who can only act cute and flip over for now. He resolves to do whatever he can to assist. That night, as Arel is in his bed, he thinks about the problem of surviving the winter. They need a lot of money to address the food shortage and require more firewood to keep warm. Arel keeps pondering until he finds a solution. Sitting on his bed, Arel ponders how to handle winter's demands for food and firewood, given that these necessities require money. After struggling to come up with a solution, Arel suddenly has an idea that may help him out of his predicament. As Arel looks at the charcoal in the fireplace, he remembers that jewels are made of carbon, and that his mother has one. Arel sees jewelry as a valuable solution to their problem. He's confident he can make a diamond if necessary. Despite his desire to get out of the crib, Ariel realizes that his weak, baby body is not yet capable of doing so. Instead, he considers using his strong mana to levitate himself out of the crib and safely onto the floor. Arel realizes nobody knows charcoal can be used for anything, but to him, it's an important source that will become a jewel with pressure. Though proud of his genius idea, he quickly snaps out of his self-praise and gets to work while others are asleep. Arel starts concentrating and combines thermal energy with mana to apply pressure to the charcoal. Arel uses all his mana to apply pressure to the charcoal, knowing he can replenish it later. He hopes the energy he's gathered won't be wasted. Arel repeatedly says, "Compress," and "zip," while compressing the charcoal. Despite the difficulty of raising the charcoal's pressure, he continues to pour energy into the process. As the pressure builds, Arel finds himself being pushed back, but he's determined to remain focused and not move. Arel motivates himself to endure, envisioning his mother's joy upon seeing the result. While his thoughts drift about his mother, a sudden surge of energy causes the pressure to build up and soot to blast out of the chimney. Arel climbs over the fireplace and rifles through it to retrieve the diamond he made. Impressed by the diamond's beauty, he contemplates how to present it to his mother in a natural way that won't arouse suspicion. The next morning, China greets His Highness and sees that the prince is walking outside of his crib. She's surprised, as there seems to be no way he could have escaped it. Placing Arel in her arms, China discovers that the prince had been walking around outside of his crib all night, covered in ash and soot, and suspects that Arel was playing all night long. China turns around and observes the mess on the floor, fireplace, and carpet. As China looks around at the mess, she wonders if the house has always been in this state. She tells Arel that he can't touch the floor now. However, Arel isn't worried, and he starts his plan and swiftly places the jewel in his mouth. China notices that there's something in Prince Arel's mouth that he shouldn't have, so she asks him to hand it over. She squeezes his cheeks until a diamond falls out of his mouth. Surprised, she asks Arel where he got it from and questions if it's from the floor. China mentions that she manages the treasury in the palace and confirms that nothing is missing and the diamond isn't even on the inventory list. She hugs Prince Arel and remarks that it seems like he wanted to give her the diamond. Prince Arel smiles and agrees, saying that he's sure his mother would like the diamond too. Later, a parade of wagons arrives at the palace and fills the empty kitchen warehouse with groceries and firewood, providing ease for the people, and it's all thanks to the diamond that was traded for the highest price. With 5 years' worth of food and firewood secured, Lady Livana expresses concern about the diamond's rightful owner. Sheena assures her that there's nothing to worry about, as the castle had been ownerless for almost 100 years until Lady Livana took it over. Sheena suggests that the diamond might be a sign of God's favor towards Prince Arel, but Lady Livana remains uncertain. Nevertheless, she expresses her gratitude for the newfound abundance of resources. Prince Arel grabs onto his mother's dress and thinks to himself that she only needs to hold on until he grows up. He envisions a future where his mother no longer has to endure any hardships. As he becomes a baby again, he resolves to make that vision a reality. That winter, the fireplace burned non-stop and the palace's finances stabilized, causing visible changes throughout the palace. As Lady Livana was eating, she remarked that the meal was too much for her to eat and asked about the servants' food. Sheena assures her not to worry about them, because we learned earlier that Anna, who had quit, was reinstated, and the treatment of servants improved. However, the most notable change that Prince Arel noticed was Lady Livana's no longer gloomy demeanor. As Prince Arel gazes at his mother, he realizes that she looks the most beautiful when she smiles. And although it was the coldest winter ever, it felt warmer than any other day in his life, because the palace was financially stable, and he had a loving mother. A year had passed, and Sheena and Lady Livana were debating what Prince Arel should wear. They made him try on various outfits, ultimately settling on a fancier one. Prince Arel was left wondering what the occasion was, and why there was such a fuss about his outfit. Prince Arel thought to himself that he needed to rest and began to think of ideas on how to do that. He then lays down on the ground and starts to whine, which surprises both his mother and Sheena. However, Sheena guessed that the prince needed to sleep and proceeded to place him in his crib. At this point, Sheena stated that Prince Arel would be officially recognized as a member of the royal family. Confused, Prince Arel wonders what she meant by recognized. Lady Livana was glad that Prince Arel had grown up without problems and wondered if the king would attend his birthday, but Sheena reassured her, saying that the king was waiting for the right time, as bad things often happen to newborns. Prince Arel overhears the conversation and realizes that this is all for his birthday. Lady Livana acknowledged that not everyone may welcome the banquet, but the announcement of Prince Arel inheriting the royal blood would be made official. She is pleased that the Arnesia royal family rules also apply to Prince Arel. Prince Arel thought to himself that this was probably why his mother looked more excited than usual. Then he realized that if it was a banquet, the nobles and other members of the royal family would be there, and he might finally be able to meet the king. The banquet for Prince Arel finally began later that night, featuring grandiose food and an extravagant party that must have cost a lot of money. Prince Arel, sitting on his throne, was excited to see the scale of the banquet and the fancy outfits everyone was wearing. Lady Livana picked Prince Arel up and asked if he was amazed, to which he thought to himself that this was certainly a new experience for him. Sheena commented that this was probably the first time Prince Arel had seen so many people, and Lady Livana pointed out that today he was the main character and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Prince Arel noticed the glares from the nobles and heard them already gossiping about him and his mother, but it didn't faze him. The only thing he was interested in was meeting his father, Tearel Energia, the king of Arnesia. The thought of the king not showing up since the day he was born angered Prince Arel, and he couldn't believe that his father didn't even care about how they lived. He thought to himself that he needed to take this opportunity to firmly imprint his existence on the king. Suddenly, the royal family of Arnesia made their appearance, signaling the beginning of the banquet. Prince Arel thought to himself that they must be the queen and her family. Prince Arel noticed the pressure of the boss, the queen, and the children beside her, who he realized was his half-siblings. As they continued to walk toward him, he noticed that the one who stood out the most was the eldest son, and the girl who seemed to have 8th grade syndrome. Prince Arel thought to himself that he needed to look into every single one of them, but they just passed by and ignored his mother. Lady Livana assumed that the noise around him was surprising and must have been hard for Prince Arel to endure. So his mother comforted him, although he thought to himself that she must be having a hard time too. Nonetheless, she still managed to make him laugh. As the onlookers stared at the queen and commented on her beauty, Prince Arel noticed his mother's expression changing. It had been fine until now, but he wondered what had caused the change. When he looked over, he saw that His Majesty the King was making his entrance, and Prince Arel noticed the immense energy flowing out of him. The pressure emanating from the king silences the chattering nobles as he approaches the banquet. Prince Arel's intuition suggests the king is at least a peak-level master. As the king continues down the banquet hall, he wonders if the king is looking at him or his mother. Despite countless reincarnations, Prince Arel still struggles to discern others' thoughts. The banquet commences with gifts and congratulations from the low-class nobles. They share a common trait with high-ranking aristocrats: their blatant disdain for Arel's mother and the prince himself. Arel considers them rude and grows angry at their disrespectful behavior. Misinterpreting Arel's mood, Lady Livana assumes there are too many people and offers him milk to soothe him. Arel decides to suppress his emotions for his mother's sake, realizing that their opinions don't matter. As the banquet progresses, Prince Arel starts to feel drowsy. However, he is abruptly roused when a girl, a child of one of the concubines, pinches his cheeks. This draws his attention to the other concubines, and their children as well. Despite feeling annoyed, Prince Arel understands that the girl is too young to comprehend the power of the nobles. The children offer their congratulations on His Highness's birthday. As Lady Livana begins to thank them for attending, they hastily take their leave. The event unfolds, and Arel feels empathy for his mother as they endure the cruelty of others. At that moment, Queen Elia approaches Lady Livana, mentioning that it has been a long time. Lady Livana inquires about her well-being, and Queen Elia responds that, "Fortunately, nothing unpleasant has occurred since her son has fulfilled his duties as the first heir," all the while casting a cold glance. Queen Elia remarks that Prince Arel resembles his mother and looks adorable. Despite her friendly tone and expressions, Arel wonders if she can genuinely be kind-hearted. He believes that if she truly cared about his mother and him, she would have assisted with their financial struggles at the concubine's castle, such as the lack of firewood that caused the guards to be lumberjacks, and the maids repurposing leftover cloth to make his clothes. The queen wishes Arel a good time, and Lady Livana expresses her gratitude. As the queen departs, the king approaches, inquiring about their situation and adaptation to life in the concubine's castle. Lady Livana assures him they are faring well, but Prince Arel begins to whine. He silently criticizes the king for not providing sufficient funds for their living expenses, dubbing him a cheapskate. Noticing Arel's discontent, Lady Livana urges him to behave. The king takes Prince Arel into his arms, and realizes the prince isn't crying like other children typically would. Arel seizes the opportunity to laugh instead, thinking that a man who doesn't melt at his baby's smile can hardly be called a father. The king remarks that Prince Arel is an intriguing child, so he decides to give the king a little extra show and gestures to be put down. As he does, Lady Livana says Arel isn't able to walk just yet. To everyone's astonishment, the prince proves them wrong. As an extraordinary 1-year-old, he begins walking in front of everyone, basking in his role as today's main character. Both Lady Livana and China are amazed by his first steps, and the king wonders if this is what Arel wanted to demonstrate. As Prince Arel walks towards the dining table, he tells himself he needs to do a bit more to prove he's different from other children. With a large audience present, he decides it's time to put on a perfect show. Prince Arel grabs the tablecloth and yanks it, causing plates and glasses to tumble down onto him. As the plates and glasses crash onto him, everyone, including the king, stares in astonishment. However, this was all part of Prince Arel's plan, not just to demonstrate that a 1-year-old could walk, but to execute his own perfect little operation, complete with his impeccable bad acting. As Arel lies there crying, the king quickly picks him up, checking for injuries. He notices the wine-stained clothes but sees that the prince isn't hurt. Sheena offers to help, but the king insists on handling it himself. Then, he discovers something shocking. Underneath the stained clothes, Arel's undergarments are ragged and old. Sheena is surprised, as she had dressed him in new undergarments that morning. As the king examines Arel's attire, he realizes that it doesn't fit the image of a prince at all, and onlookers deduce that he must have lived a humble life. Hearing whispers in the crowd, the king shouts for silence, causing everyone to cower in fear. The king ponders Arel's life, while the prince revels in his successful plan. Arel had intentionally torn his undergarments by raising his body heat using his energy, and shredding the clothes, as the fabric was so fragile that he could tear through it with ease. This revealed the uncomfortable truth hidden beneath the fancy clothes meant for his birthday. Lady Livanna, frozen with worry, listens as the king demands answers. Instead of directing his questions at her, he asks his servant Jennifer about the budget allocation for each palace. Jennifer claims it should be distributed fairly. The king, angered by the situation, demands that Jennifer bring the budget details immediately, as this doesn't seem like fairness at all. Prince Arel knows his birthday party has turned into a hearing, but he sees it as an opportunity to learn about his father. Lady Livanna takes responsibility for the situation and takes Arel back into her arms, while the king remains silent. Arel thinks to himself that they must endure this a bit longer, as he's doing it for their sake. As Jennifer returns with the budget, the entire room anxiously awaits the unfolding events. Upon examining the budget, the king suddenly crumbles and burns the paper in a fit of rage, causing Lady Livanna to tremble in fear. Arel observes the king's anger and realizes that the king was unaware of their predicament, prompting him to wonder who is responsible for their situation. The king questions the queen about her knowledge of the situation. She asks what the budget revealed, and he responds that it was distributed unfairly and misused. The queen expresses disbelief, and the king asks how she could be unaware of this, given her authority over the concubine's affairs. Just as the king interrogates the queen, her son interrupts the conversation. The queen's son argues that someone wicked must have been responsible, and that his mother never intended for this to happen. The king interrupts, asking if that means she is not responsible just because she didn't do it herself, his gaze cold and intense. He emphasizes that his brother was poorly clothed and starved due to this mismanagement, and as we look back on the queen's son, he shows us a face of defeat. Amidst all this, Prince Arel senses no malice from the queen, but feels pressure from the king. The king questions if she is truly not responsible for anything, but the queen's son remains silent. The king expresses his disappointment, and the room becomes dark and gloomy. Lady Livanna interrupts, claiming that it is not Lady Elia's fault, but her own for not deserving it. The king questions her, stating that she gave birth to a child with his blood, which makes her part of the royal family. As Lady Livanna stutters in response to the king's words, he holds her arm and reassures her to be proud of her royal status. At this moment, the queen's expression shifts from a seemingly concerned one to one of disgust. The king orders them to track down the perpetrator and hold them accountable, hoping that such an incident will not happen again. The queen promises to not cause any more trouble, and the king warns that she will be held accountable if it does. Although the queen pledges to identify and punish the person responsible, she secretly knows who it is and deems them insignificant. The queen apologizes to Lady Livanna, expressing her regret for not consulting her more frequently, but Lady Livana says no apology is needed. Upon hearing this, Prince Arel disagrees internally, sensing the insincerity in the Queen's eyes. A few days later, the budget problem is resolved, and the mastermind, an aristocrat embezzling money, is captured and beheaded. At the concubine's castle, maids discuss the ringleader's confession and wonder what happened to the embezzled money. The maids are relieved, though, and Prince Arel believes it was too easy and someone is covering up the real culprit. He knows the Queen is a formidable opponent and plans to deal with her once he's older. For now, he focuses on eating and growing. Speaking of eating, Prince Arel starts crying to get the maid's attention, and as China feeds Prince Arel, he's thrilled to only have fun and eat. Feeling refreshed, he contemplates taking a nap. Suddenly, he hears horses neighing outside and wakes up, wondering about the commotion. Noticing China is still asleep, he looks out the window and sees a carriage escorted by soldiers and wonders to whom it belongs to. He hears 3 people approaching, one being his mother, another an adult, and the last with light footsteps. As Lady Livana and the other 2 guests approach the door, Prince Arel realizes China is still fast asleep and must wake her up. He quickly rushes to the sleeping Nani, and as the door opens, Lady Livana and the guests enter. Prince Arel was seen playfully squeezing China's cheeks, prompting Lady Livana to ask him to stop. As China stood up, she overhears Lady Livana scolding Prince Arel for his actions. With China now awake and Lady Livana present, Prince Arel was reminded to listen well to his China. To China's surprise, another noble, Miss Finelia, was in the room. China apologized for not having prepared for her arrival, but Miss Finelia assured her it was fine since she hadn't informed anyone of her visit. Prince Arel recalled that Miss Finelia had been the royal concubine during his birthday celebration. Lady Livana commented that had she known, she could have prepared something for Miss Finelia, who preferred to keep her visit a secret. After patting her daughter's head and telling her to stay put, Miss Finelia joined Lady Livana for a private chat over tea. Lady Livana was left wondering what the topic of conversation would be when Miss Finelia suddenly apologized, causing Lady Livana to cough in surprise. When asked about her apology, Miss Finelia explained that she had felt guilty ever since the prince's birthday celebration. The story then delved into the history of Miss Finelia's noble family, the House of Kinchester. Renowned for their contribution during the peak of a past war, their name was known throughout the country. However, their decline began when no male heirs displayed military talent, which caused rumors to circulate about the family's financial struggles. Lady Livana inquired if the issue was related to family debt. Miss Finelia confirmed this, explaining that she couldn't refuse their proposal. She handed Lady Livana a bag of gold, not seeking forgiveness, but hoping that any hatred would be directed at her alone, sparing her daughter from the feudal affairs of the king. Lady Livana reassured Miss Finelia, saying she bore no ill will and would regard the gold as a symbol of goodwill between them, and pushed the bag towards her. Lady Livana then recalls that their budget issue is related to her connection with Queen Elia because she was serving as the Queen's attendant. This revelation shocks Prince Ariel, who now understands the beef between his mother and the Queen. He starts to feel uncomfortable and pensive about his mother's situation. Sheena notices his unease and asks if he's all right, but Prince Arel just glances at her with a big baby smile and reassures her, appearing to be fine. Sheena comments on his surprising mood swings and then walks away to chat with Princess Kania about how far she has read in her book. Then Prince Ariel concentrates intently, using his mastery over his chi to overhear conversations beyond the room. In the process, he listens in on his mother's discussion. As the two talks, he hears Lady Livana admitting that she has accepted the Queen's contempt, as there is little else she can do. Nevertheless, with Prince Arel now by her side, she is determined to prevent the Queen from having her way, despite the challenges this may bring. Lady Livana expresses her desire to grow closer to Miss Finelia. Sensing this isn't merely out of goodwill, Miss Finelia acknowledges Lady Levana's determination and agrees. They believe that when they both find themselves cornered, they can rely on each other. As the conversation continues, Prince Arel reflects on his mother's awareness of the invisible feud between the Queen and the royals, including himself and his mother. He wonders who will pose a threat from now on, and if he should brace himself for the challenges ahead. Just then, he notices Princess Cania approaching his crib. He thinks she won't climb in, but she does, squeezing his cheeks and commenting on their softness and warmth. Prince Arel is puzzled, feeling like a toy. China observes this, and he hopes she will help him. Instead, she remarks on his cuteness, and Cania agrees. China even encourages Cania to visit more often, while Arel looks defeated and eventually cries. Time passes, and Prince Arel is now 30 months old. He gazes out the window, pondering how life is fleeting as he approaches his 3rd birthday. He struggles to adjust to talking like a baby, recalling his eloquent speech during his 45th reincarnation and how he was able to seduce a woman in 10 minutes. Suddenly he hears a child's whistle in the hallway, and he hides, knowing it was Princess Cania who barges into his room, looking for him. But Prince Arel stinks at hide-and-seek, and she easily spots his shoes behind a curtain, so she exclaims, "Found you!" and asks if he wants to play hide-and-seek. In his mind, Ariel denies this, but Cania drags him to a larger space to play. After Miss Finelia's initial visit, Cania's visits became more frequent, thinking it was because of China's idea, but due to that, Ariel noticed his mother and Finelia growing closer. Cania asks Prince Arel to promise he'll come to her when he's older, whenever she calls. Reluctantly, Prince Arel agrees and thanks her, but inwardly thinks she visits only because she has someone to play with. Cania declares she likes Prince Arel best, not wanting to spend time with her siblings, Leonil and Meryl. Prince Arel thinks to himself that he's unsure about Cania's expectations, and, considering his age, he probably won't play with her in a few years as they grow older. Cania suddenly lifts Arel into a tight hug, making it hard for him to breathe. From a distance, someone warns her not to hurt him, and swiftly, Arel flees to seek refuge, taking cover behind Cania's attentive maid and protective escort. Cania wants to continue playing, but her maid suggests indoor activities like painting and music. Cania refuses, finding them boring, and declares her interest in learning swordsmanship, inspired by watching her brother Kyle practice. Prince Arel is impressed by Cania's natural talent, even though she's only imitating her brother's practice. Cania exclaims that she wants to learn swordsmanship to knock down knights, but her maid forbids it. Frustrated, Cania asks why, since her brothers are learning. Her maid argues that there's no need for her to wield a sword, and that she should focus on literature and culture. Before she can finish, the maid realizes Cania has taken the sword from her scabbard and is swinging it around. Frantically, the maid asks Cania to return the sword, but Cania insists on learning swordsmanship. Worried, her maid concedes, but asks her to practice with the scabbard on. As Arel watches the scene, he finds himself growing more fond of Cania. As the seasons pass and Prince Arel turns 5, we see him in the pastures of his territory, riding his mighty stallion with a companion by his side. He tugs on the reins, urging his horse to gallop faster and faster. However, appearances can be deceiving, as the prince is actually just playing pretend on a rocking horse. China asks him if he wants to ride a real horse instead, but Prince Arel replies that it's too dangerous. China tries to persuade the young prince that at his age, he should be interested in horse riding and swordplay. Nonetheless, Arel confidently rejects the notion that a prince must ride a horse, leaving China disheartened by his apparent lack of motivation. This isn't Prince Arel's first life. In fact, it's his 101st reincarnation. Having lived through so many lives, he has come to understand a harsh truth. Extraordinary talent invites misfortune. Whenever he excels at something, Like swordsmanship or magic, he attracts attention and must confront those who seek to exploit or destroy him. As a prince of both royal and humble lineage, his actions are critical. His ultimate goal is to enjoy a comfortable life, reaping the benefits of his position. Back in the castle, Prince Arel informs China that he needs some alone time and asks her not to disturb him. China agrees, and as he closes the door behind China, she sulks, hoping the prince will find solace in meditation. In reality, he's merely lying in bed, doing nothing. Later that day, we find Prince Arel and China arguing. On the verge of tears, the prince composes himself and takes a seat. China asks if he despises studying so much, reminding him that at 5 years old, he should be eager to learn and expand his knowledge. However, Prince Arel simply replies that he hates it, has no interest in the world, and sees no need for further knowledge. China sighs and tells Prince Arel that he sounds like someone who has lived several lives. Before she could finish, Prince Arel interrupts her, assuring her that it was not her fault. With a resolute expression, he silently decides that he wants to live for once. YOLO doesn't apply to Prince Arel, so it only took him 100 reincarnations to have this lifestyle once. China reminds the prince that, according to royal law, he must begin his studies at age 5. She places an assortment of basic books before him, explaining that they have been carefully selected just for him. Prince Arel, however, exudes an air of melancholy and demonstrates the proper way to use a book by spinning it. Flustered, China tells him he should be reading, not spinning, and that many commoners wish to learn but lack the opportunity. Prince Arel dismisses her words, using the books to construct a makeshift house. China insists that he treat the books with respect and return to his seat, but he has other plans. Since China refuses to listen, he resorts to whining, crying out, "I don't want to! I won't study!" Just then, the door bursts open, and Prince Arel's loving mother appears, her gaze filled with irritation. If anything in this world can make something stop, it would be a loving mother's gaze of irritation. Under her watchful eye, the prince reluctantly begins his studies in the library. Despite this, he knows that if his parents truly wanted him to learn more about the world, he would be safe. Ironically, the more he excels, the more he endangers those around him. After all, the more a child of a concubine with noble blood displays their talent, the more others will seek to harm them. It may seem unfair, but one's destiny is often determined at birth. All Prince Arel desires is a carefree, idle life for the sake of everyone. As Prince Arel daydreams, and China interrupts him, insisting that if he studies diligently and earns praise, everyone will be happy. Arel ponders this notion, but ultimately deems it too presumptuous for him. China, however, urges him to abandon such thoughts, warning him that his continued reluctance will sadden his mother. This revelation sparks a newfound determination in Prince Arel, and he decides to study for his mother's sake. Still, he refuses to learn swordsmanship or magic, fearing the consequences. Instead, he begins brainstorming ideas for his future. A few days later, a carriage arrives at the concubine's residence. China informs Prince Arel that a mage from the magic tower is there to assess his mana. If he proves talented in this area, he will receive magical instruction. This news worries the prince, as any mage would surely sense the vast, unparalleled mana within him. His only option is to conceal his mana somehow. As the prince walks down the hallway to meet the tester, head bowed, China tries to lift his spirits, assuring him that regardless of his mana level, he can still develop his abilities. The door opens, revealing the tester's shocked expression. The mage swiftly rises to his feet and locks eyes with Prince Arel. As they study each other, Prince Arel observes the mana coursing through the mage's body, wondering how he himself appears through the mage's eyes. As the mage approaches and grasps Prince Arel's arm to check his vitals, he remarks that he has noticed something unusual. China compliments Prince Arel, asking if he is special, but the mage hesitates, unsure whether to call him special or peculiar since he can't detect any mana within the prince's body. Despite his efforts to use mana to examine Prince Arel's veins, the mage finds nothing. Sheena is astonished by this revelation, while Prince Arel leans back in his chair, secretly celebrating his successful concealment of mana. Earlier, as Prince Arel strolled down the hallway towards the reception room, he had been circulating his chi to condense his mana. Once condensed, he directed it to his peripheral nerves. Meeting the mage, he was relieved to see a look of surprise on the mage's face, as the absence of mana in a member of the royal lineage defied logic. Prince Arel had successfully thrown the mage off course while his veins were being probed for mana. The mage informed Lady Livana that Prince Arel appeared to have no aptitude for mana, leaving her puzzled. The mage explained that even commoners possessed a small amount of mana, yet Prince Arel had none whatsoever. Overhearing this, the prince wondered if he had gone too far. A look of despair crossed Lady Livana's face as she realized her son lacked the abilities needed to become a mage. However, this was all part of Prince Arel's scheme to convince everyone of his incompetence, making them believe he was incapable of handling mana at all. As he sulked in his chair, he knew that this was only the beginning of his feigned ineptitude. The following day, Prince Arel is introduced to a young knight named Lanfil Tagaran, who has been assigned to instruct him in the art of swordsmanship. Prince Arel inwardly judges his new trainer, believing him to be too weak and ordinary to capture his interest or match his skill level. In his previous life, the prince had fought various monsters and endured countless intense battles. Nevertheless, Prince Arel agrees to the training, encouraging both of them to do their best and grow stronger. However, he secretly believes the training is more for the young knight's benefit than his own. Despite this, he has no desire to undergo any challenging exercises, like Sister Kanya, who wears weights to develop her physical strength. Lanfil explains that this type of rigorous training is customary for the Kinchester family, but Prince Arel retorts that it sounds more like something a household of martial artists would do. He then inquires about their training plan. Lanfil informs the prince that, in addition to strength, swordsmanship requires flexibility and balance, which he demonstrates by skillfully swinging his sword. He suggests they begin with basic exercises to enhance balance and concentration, such as balancing on logs. Prince Arel exclaims that he fears falling, but he has only started on the lowest step. Lanfil reassures him with a strained smile, saying that even if he were to fall, he wouldn't be injured. Prince Arel then asks what he should do, given his fear of heights. The next focus of their training is flexibility. Since Prince Arel is young, Lanfil assumes he will have no issues with this. However, much to Lanfil's surprise, the young prince struggles to even touch his toes. Undeterred, Lanfil moves on to sword training using wooden swords. He teaches Prince Arel to use centrifugal force to transfer power to the tip of his sword. As the prince attempts this, his grip falters, and the sword slips from his grasp. Lanfil watches in disbelief as Prince Arel completely botches the exercise. Prince Arel, with a look of despair, admits to Lanfil that he has no talent for swordsmanship. But Lanfil encourages him, explaining that it is his first time and that he will improve with continued training. He then hands the prince another sword. Throughout the training, Prince Arel is aware of a watchful observer. His feigned incompetence has been intentional, designed to spread rumors of his inadequacy throughout the city. Indeed, whispers among the nobility suggest that Prince Arel possesses even less mana than commoners. These rumors eventually reach the Queen's ears, describing how Prince Arel has failed in every aspect of martial arts, and is so clumsy that he might trip simply by walking. While some are amused by these tales, they place Prince Arel in a difficult position. At the concubine's castle, Prince Arel receives news of an incoming private tutor while enjoying delicious cookies and orange juice, a unique combination for these medieval times. The circulating rumors of Prince Arel's ineptitude have caused numerous tutors to refuse the responsibility of teaching the so-called trash prince. Curious as to who would dare take on the task, Prince Arel peers out the window just in time to see his new tutor alighting from a carriage. Moments later, he learns that the tutor's name is Gamel Pernia. The atmosphere in the room grows tense, weighed down by the pressure of teaching an allegedly incompetent prince and the presence of a disinterested student. Prince Arel sighs in resignation, deciding that they should begin with literature, focusing on foreign and common languages. Gamel places stacks of books before Prince Arel, explaining that learning basic grammar typically takes only a day. However, given the prince's notorious reputation, Gamel offers him a few days instead, reassuring him that it's fine if he still struggles. Annoyed, Prince Arel insists that he will do his best. Gamel carries on, stating that poor academic performance is not necessarily due to a lack of interest or aptitude, but rather the capacity of the brain, implying that it isn't the prince's fault. Prince Arel finds it disheartening to be openly looked down upon for his perceived incompetence. He realizes that while he wanted people to stop caring about him, he hadn't anticipated the sting of their disdain. As night falls and moonlight bathes the library in the concubine's castle, a small figure slips through the doorway. Prince Arel. The prince prides himself on his exceptional linguistic skills, owing to his hundreds of past lives, which have allowed him to speak fluently from an early age. Strolling through the library's corridor, he wonders whether he should startle others with his genius. Concentrating mana in his hands, Prince Arel searches for books on vocabulary and grammar, using his magical abilities to pluck them from the shelves as he passes each row. He decides to broaden his scope and include books from other countries as well. With precision, he collects all relevant texts and neatly arranges them on a table. As he opens one of the books, an evil grin spreads across his face. He remarks that while many texts exist in the world, they all share common rules. Prince Arel has lived 100 lives, and in each one, he has never been idle. That night, he devotes himself to studying the books, eager to display his brilliance. A few days later, Gamel confronts the prince, suggesting that his jests have gone too far and questioning whether he has genuinely mastered the common languages. Prince Arel sighs and assures Gamel that he isn't lying, offering to prove his expertise by reading something. Gamel wonders if the prince has merely memorized the texts, but Prince Arel insists that memorizing an entire language would be a remarkable feat in itself. After all, compared to the characters of neighboring countries, the kingdom's official language presents a significant challenge. The flustered Gamel challenges Prince Arel to select a different book to prove his claims, asserting that even the smartest individuals need to be at least 12 years old to read a simple book, while the prince is only 5. Thus, mastering a common language in just 2 days seems preposterous. Without missing a beat, Prince Arel grabs a book and flawlessly recites its contents, leaving Gamel astounded. Overwhelmed, Gamel begins to cry, exclaiming that this achievement is extraordinary. After all, a student's success elevates their teacher's reputation as well. Prince Arel merely scoffs, acknowledging that Gamel should feel honored to have such a prodigious student like him. Energized by this revelation, Gamel eagerly proceeds to that day's lesson, excited to teach his brilliant pupil. By the following night, the rumors surrounding Prince Arel had shifted. Previously, the nobility gossiped about how he couldn't even properly wield a sword, yet now, they marveled at how he had mastered the common language in a mere 2 days. Whispers circulated that he could effortlessly solve basic math problems in his head on the spot. This marked the beginning of the genius Arel's legendary reputation. But what was the source of these rumors? In a local tavern, a familiar figure could be seen boasting about recognizing Prince Arel's potential when everyone else had dismissed him. He insisted that everyone possessed hidden talents and credited his own excellent teaching for the prince's success. The drunken man regaling the nobles with tales of his prodigious student was none other than Gamel, Prince Arel's tutor. News of Arel's remarkable intellect soon reached the king, who expressed astonishment at his son's extraordinary abilities. In his conversation with Lady Livanna, the king muses that whether it be swordsmanship or magic, their young prince must have struggled with being forced to participate in activities ill-suited to his abilities. Lady Livana apologizes for causing the king concern, while privately reflecting that she should have recognized her son's exceptional nature sooner, as his mother. As the king approaches Lady Livana, he wonders if she has been deeply worried about their son. As they share a tender gaze, the king expresses his conviction that Prince Arel will grow up to be an impressive individual. Unbeknownst to them, the prince has been eavesdropping on their conversation and silently concurs that he will indeed accomplish great things, perhaps just enough to keep the king's interest, secure a prominent position, and enjoy himself. Thus begins the story of Arel's 101st Reincarnation, a prodigious scholar. A few days later, Prince Arel notices an increased number of guards stationed outside the concubine's castle. He surmises that, since he is unable to wield a sword or use magic, the king has sent additional troops to protect his son. The prince smiles, thinking that the king must be in good spirits. Just then, he hears a loud thud behind him. China has dropped off a large chest, which his mother explains is a gift from the king. Surprised, Prince Arel approaches the chest, and his mother urges him to open it and see what's inside. Upon opening it, he discovers an abundance of gold coins and jewels. As he sifts through the treasure, he finds a unique necklace. China inquires whether it's the most valuable item in the chest, but Prince Arel replies that while it may not be the most expensive, it is certainly the most extraordinary. Wearing the necklace, he explains, activates the brain and accelerates one's thinking, consequently reducing fatigue. China is amazed by Prince Arel's knowledge, attributing his insights to his intense study over the past few days, but the prince modestly brushes off the praise. In reality, while the necklace may seem ordinary to others, Prince Arel can perceive the mana-triggering device within the jewel. However, he has no need for it due to his inner chi. He begins to think about Kanya, who has been training her body for swordsmanship and has become quite muscular. Prince Arel asks his mother if he can give the necklace to Kanya. Lady Livana gently pats her son's head and says that while the necklace is a gift from the king, giving it away as a present would surely please his majesty. She then inquires what Prince Arel admires about Kanya, to which he responds that she is incredibly strong, prompting laughter from the maids. That day, everyone in the concubine's castle rejoiced in the knowledge that Prince Arel was both favored and acknowledged by the king. The young knight proudly declared this fact, reminding his fellow knights that they were all part of the concubine's castle and should take pride in it. A few days later, Prince Arel sat in the dining hall with China, who informed him that all the desserts he had requested were prepared and asked for his opinion. As the prince sampled the various desserts, he found none to his liking and reached for another morsel. China encouraged him to take his time and enjoy the treats, inquiring if they were delicious. Prince Arel, frustrated, replied that they were not, as all the desserts lacked the sweetness he craved. China, puzzled, mentioned that the desserts were prepared by the best chefs and offered to call one of them over. Contemplating the situation, Prince Arel experienced a moment of clarity. What he needed was not a chef, but an alchemist. This revelation took China by surprise. Prince Arel begins to daydream about carbonated beverages and sweets from his previous life, drooling at the thought of drinking cola. He realizes that to recreate the taste of cola, he'll need an alchemist's help. China, puzzled by the mention of an alchemist, questions Prince Arel, who is surprised she overheard his musings. Prince Arel considers explaining but doubts she would understand, especially coming from a 5-year-old's sudden desire for an alchemist. Assessing his situation, Prince Arel recognizes the challenge of producing bold flavors with the limited seasonings and ingredients available in the kingdom. Furthermore, the creation of cola would require specific secondary and tertiary processes not currently accessible to him. Disheartened by this realization, he dreams of sipping a cold, tangy sweet cola. Motivated by his desire, Prince Arel reminds himself that he has chosen the genius scholar path and should take action. He jumps up from his chair and dashes out the door. China, bewildered by his sudden departure, asks where he's going, to which Prince Arel replies that he's off to study. Still perplexed, China scratches her ear, double-checking if she heard the word study correctly. As Prince Arel races through the castle corridors, he becomes singularly focused on chemistry. Since cooking and chemistry are closely related, he's determined to find answers in alchemy, allowing him to recreate cola, no matter the obstacles. 3 years pass, and Prince Arel, now 8 years old, sits at the head of a conference table. The topic of discussion revolves around plans to build new bridges, particularly in areas frequented by merchants. A supervisor inquires about Prince Arel's thoughts on the bridge plans. As he examines the blueprints, Prince Arel commends their magnificence and asks, with a hidden smirk, who designed the bridge. Another supervisor proudly takes credit, but his smile quickly fades when Prince Arel threatens to fire him if he presents another useless design. Prince Arel highlights flaws in the design, explaining that it might be functional now, but its structure would pose a danger when snow accumulates during the winter. The load would concentrate on the wooden parts below, yet the designers prioritized its flashy appearance over safety. He emphasizes that although maintaining the kingdom's beauty and grandeur is important, safety must be the top priority. He demands a redesign, then moves on to the next blueprint. With his vast knowledge and intelligence, Prince Arel's workload has skyrocketed. Those who claim to be experts or veterans in their fields pale in comparison to him. Still, they decide to place their trust in an 8-year-old. Prince Arel pities them, but he knows there is no other way. He must continue to demonstrate his skills. After the conference, as Prince Arel departs, a new maid notices him and calls out to him by his new nickname, the Young Gray Sage. Shocked by the moniker, he considers it extremely cheesy. Recognizing that the maid is new, he tells her not to call him by that nickname again, since he dislikes it. She understands and promises to keep it in mind, but as he walks away, she almost slips up and calls him the Young Gray Sage once more. Annoyed by his new nickname, Prince Arel considers it to be lame. As the carriage pulls away, Lady Livana looks out the window and asks China if Arel is going somewhere. China responds that Prince Arel has requested an audience with the king, prompting Lady Livana to wonder about the nature of their conversation. Hesitantly, China considers mentioning his desire to learn alchemy. In the carriage, Prince Arel ponders how the king might react if he suddenly asks to learn alchemy. Although his audience request was granted immediately, he assumes the king has come to trust him, as Prince Arel has been working diligently in various fields. As he looks out the window, the prince can't shake the feeling of being overwhelmed by the king's charisma, even after having reincarnated 100 times. He tells himself to remain calm, and to avoid making any mistakes, he must keep his composure when speaking to the king. When the king inquires why Prince Arel wants to learn alchemy, he replies that he wishes to be of greater help to the kingdom and the king. As he isn't skilled with swords or magic, he can only accumulate knowledge and apply it. The king considers Prince Arel's thoughts and admires the young prince's thoughtfulness. Agreeing to his request, the king promises to introduce him to some trustworthy alchemists and asks if he needs anything else. Prince Arel responds that he will ask for anything else later if needed. As the king smiles, Prince Arel smirks, thinking to himself that his plan worked. From that day on, the best alchemists in the kingdom gathered upon hearing that Prince Arel sought an alchemy teacher, viewing it as an opportunity to showcase their alchemical prowess and earn merit. Among the alchemists, it was only natural that Damon Ranjet, a practical alchemist who created reflective mirrors that transmit strong light far away and installed them on the western outskirts of the fortress to deter invaders, be selected. A few days later, Prince Arel meets Damon in the garden of the concubine castle, and Damon comments on the garden's true beauty. Prince Arel, surprised by Damon's appearance, says he expected an elder-level alchemist based on his reputation, but instead, Damon looks quite young. In response, Damon explains that his hair turned white after accidentally inhaling toxic smoke a long time ago. Prince Arel understands that Damon nearly died while learning alchemy and scoffs. Although Damon speaks calmly, he warns the prince to be prepared, as he is responsible for the young gray sage. If Prince Arel dies during research or experiments, Damon will have to take responsibility for his own life. With a serious expression, Damon reiterates that learning alchemy is much more difficult and dangerous than the prince imagines. He points out the prince's young age, but before Damon can finish, Prince Arel interrupts to say that he understands the risks. He knows alchemy is a science, not magic, and he isn't delusional about turning lead into gold. Instead, he seeks pure technology that can remove impurities from iron ores and develop stronger metals. Amazed by Prince Arel's statements, Damon thinks that with his intelligence and charisma, the prince will become the true monarch who will lead the kingdom of Arnesia. Moved by Arel's bold speech, Damon kneels before the prince, promising to do his best to teach him despite any perceived shortcomings. A few days have passed since the alchemy class began, and Prince Arel is diligently studying when Damon suddenly asks if he has studied alchemy before. Surprised by the question, Prince Arel wonders if he has shown off too much, but quickly diverts the topic by claiming that he read about it in a book. Damon accepts his answer, remarking that Prince Arel is just as the rumors described. Silently, Prince Arel is relieved that he adopted the genius scholar persona. The two of them end up working tirelessly from sunrise to sunset. As their research progresses, Prince Arel confirms the technique of hardening iron by adding eggshells or bone ash, which he verifies with Damon. In addition to learning methods for extracting lead and other substances, Prince Arel realizes that, apart from the unique metals and medicines in this world, everything else is the same as in his previous lives. Amazed, Prince Arel explains aloud how fortunate it is that the rules are no different. Damon questions the prince about his remark, but Prince Arel dismisses it, saying he was just talking to himself. With his plan proceeding smoothly, Prince Arel sends a letter to the king requesting for more alchemists. The king does not hesitate and agrees to the request, ordering his men to find the best alchemists in the kingdom. His advisor understands the order, but expresses concern about potential complaints regarding the kingdom's budget allocation. Reflecting on his previous meeting with Prince Arel, the king reassures his advisor that if it is the prince, then the research will surely benefit the kingdom. Back in the kingdom, Prince Arel announces his intention to create a carbonated drink, which astonishes the alchemists. They question him about the carbonated drink, asking if he intends to make food. To their surprise, Prince Arel joyfully confirms that is exactly what he plans to do. He presents some basic theories, but before he can continue with his project, the alchemists in the room become disheartened. They had traveled there to bring honor to their family names, but instead found themselves making snacks. One alchemist even laments giving up his tenured professor position at the Alchemy Academy. To reassure them, Prince Arel declares that they will be rewarded handsomely regardless of the project's outcome. At this point, the room's atmosphere transforms, and the alchemists begin brainstorming ideas. They determine that the first requirement is carbonated water, which can be found in natural veins within certain territories of the kingdom, and can be quickly transported. Prince Arel observes that sincerity is not a priority for these people. They will be content as long as they receive ample money or fame. Nevertheless, he acknowledges that they will serve as a valuable resource for accelerating his research. A few days later, wagons filled with barrels of carbonated water from various territories arrive one after another, delighting Prince Arel. Damon starts by opening one of the barrels and asking, with a look of disgust, if they are supposed to drink it. Prince Arel tells him they must first check if it is drinkable, but upon inspecting the contents, he nearly gags at the sight and declares the carbonated water undrinkable, labeling it a failure. He examines the other barrels and deduces their failures as well. Unfazed, Prince Arel announces that they need to create artificially carbonated water, and the alchemists clamor in response. Distributing a paper containing relevant theories, he suggested that discovering clues based on these theories might simplify the task. Sensing the weight of responsibility upon them, Prince Arel reassured the alchemists that, as the best in their field, he believed they would accomplish the goal in no time. Turning to Damon for affirmation, the prince was met with a lackluster agreement. They were, indeed, the finest alchemists in Indonesia. With a spring in his step, Prince Arel exited the room, whistling cheerfully as he told the alchemists that experimenting with theories and putting them into practice should be their delight, so he wouldn't intrude on their time any further. Though he pondered whether they could truly achieve the goal within a week, he remained confident that his challenge would inspire them to complete the task even more swiftly. Just a few days later, Prince Arel excitedly assures his alchemists that this carbonated water will undoubtedly bring vitality to the kingdom, and that its popularity will generate a massive fortune. The alchemists privately wonder if it can truly achieve such results. Prince Arel is amazed that they managed to create artificially carbonated water so quickly, and he eagerly grabs a flask to sample it. Damon and the other alchemists speculate whether it will become popular, as the water packs quite a kick but lacks taste. Prince Arel clears up the misunderstanding, explaining that they will not drink it as is but instead mix it with fruit juice or alcohol. Although his original goal was to recreate cola, he could not obtain the cola fruit and settled for a carbonated alternative. Prince Arel began by adding lemon juice to the carbonated beverage and took a sip. The initial taste was spot on, causing him to exclaim that it was perfect, his eyes shining with excitement. He then distributed samples to the alchemists, who, as expected, adored them. The invigorating lemon flavor, coupled with the gentle fizz of carbonation, left them yearning for more. And so, Prince Arel's carbonated ade was born. The fame of carbonated ade rapidly extended beyond the borders of the Indonesia kingdom, transforming into a luxurious item exchanged among the nobility. Even the king had to try it, and was astonished, filled with pride that his own prince had devised such a remarkable beverage. Count Dement was puzzled by the prince's creation, and felt the need to consult his servant for confirmation. The servant confirmed that the product was developed under Prince Arel's guidance, and had become a popular, luxurious item that significantly contributed to the economy of the Indonesia kingdom. There were rumors that carriages filled with gold visited the concubine's palace on a daily basis. Regretting his past decision not to support Prince Arel on his first birthday, and having judged him as worthless, Count Dement lamented the missed opportunity to benefit from this golden goose. Overcome with sorrow, he vowed to pay close attention from that day forward. 2 years had passed, and back at the concubine's castle, 16-year-old Princess Cania was proudly showcasing her swordsmanship. After completing her display, she shyly asked 10-year-old Prince Arel for his opinion. The prince hesitated before responding, telling her she looked incredibly cool and amazing. Both he and Cania's escort offered her compliments, with her escort stating that her basic swordsmanship was beyond reproach. Silently agreeing, Prince Arel thought to himself that she was far more skilled than any boy his age. Overjoyed by their praise, Princess Cania leaped with excitement, expressing her gratitude for their kind words. Observing her exuberance, her escort suggested they take a break, while Prince Arel couldn't help but think how adorable she looked as she jumped with such enthusiasm. After their training session, Cania and Arel sat down at a table outside the gardens and enjoyed a cup of tea when Cania mentioned the recent buzz about Arel's development of carbonated beverages, which had not only boosted the royal palace's situation, but also Indonesia's finances. Cheerfully, Arel stated it was merely his duty as a prince, while Cania shared a rumor about him being the perfect son, causing envy among many toward Lady Livana. There was more happening behind the scenes than just Arel's success in creating soda. After learning that his mother, Livana Einrest, hailed from a fallen noble family that managed a small territory and lived as commoners, Prince Arel decided to entrust the soda distribution to the Einrests. This decision led to remarkable results, with people lining up not only for a single soda, but also for crates upon crates, eager to quench their thirst. Some were even willing to pay 2 or 3 times the regular price to get their hands on the beverage. In addition to soda, Prince Arel introduced yogurt and MSG to the market, both of which garnered immense popularity. These achievements revolutionized the Einrest family's finances, making them wealthier than any merchant in the kingdom. Their residence, adorned with gold from ceiling to floor, shone so brightly that navigating through it was nearly impossible due to the overpowering radiance. Due to these rumors, people began comparing the actions of Prince Arel to those of Princess Cania, which left Cania feeling frustrated and upset to the point of tears. She implored him to ease up on his contribution. All Prince Arel could do was chuckle and say, "Is that so?" Hoping to shift the conversation, he invited Cania to enjoy some soda and waffles topped with Irel syrup, assuring her he could afford the indulgence. However, Cania had other ideas. She unsheathed her sword, highlighting what she perceived as Arel's issue. What good was wealth if he couldn't exercise or practice swordsmanship? So with her sword at his throat, she declared she would teach him swordsmanship instead. Slightly annoyed, Arel thanked her for the offer but declined, explaining he didn't wish to follow that path in this life and reflecting on his past as a swordsman. As Arel reminisced, Cania suddenly sprang into action, attacking him while demonstrating the proper techniques. Arel figured complying would bring a swifter end to the situation, and could feel Cania's dream and goal. Her aspiration to raise a family of master swordsmen single-handedly must have instilled the delicate girl with boundless energy. Touched by her determination, Prince Arel began to channel his chi incrementally, offering Cania his support in her pursuit. A few days later, Prince Arel was in a carriage on his way to see the king. He marveled at the carriage's size, comparing it to a Lamborghini, and noticed the attention it drew. With an escort accompanying him, he felt as if he were becoming an idol. As Arel laid back and relaxed in the carriage, he wondered what the king would discuss with him this time. He suddenly had an inkling that he might receive an additional allowance as a reward for his achievements. Upon arriving, Prince Arel joined the king for lunch. He recalled how the unnerving silence used to make him nervous, but he had grown accustomed to it. So, he sat and enjoyed his meal alone while waiting for the king to speak, as he had been visiting the king more frequently. Just as Prince Arel was about to swallow a cookie, he choked when the king asked if he had any thoughts of taking up a full-fledged government job. Arel cleared his throat and realized that the time had finally come for him. The king continued, saying it might be a bit early, but if he took on government work, no one would object. He asked Arel what he thought, and if there was any specific work he wanted. Trying to keep his composure, Prince Arel replied that he didn't have any preferences, all the while thinking to himself that he just wanted to play and eat in this life. Taking a sip of tea, Prince Arel tried to calm himself and told the king he didn't understand why he was considering this occupation when he was still learning science and alchemy. He maintained a blank facial expression as the king sat there in silence. Arel pondered the fact that the first prince wasn't involved in the government yet, and wondered why the king wanted him to assume a position instead. He considered the lack of action from the queen's and the first prince's sides, as he had always maintained a clear boundary that he shouldn't cross. The recent ball had been dismissed due to the mischievous antics of the freak prince, and Arel considered himself lucky. After all, being loved by the king was different from being entrusted with a significant government post. Prince Arel reflected on his aversion to engaging in gossip and feuding with his brothers. He pondered whether the king was intentionally trying to sow discord among them, and if that was his true intention. Arel considered that the survival of the fittest mentality wasn't exclusive to the natural world. Being on the throne required the strength of an eagle. Without such might, even the wisdom of hundreds of previous lives wouldn't guarantee survival. Did the king truly yearn for a realm where only the strong persevered? Regardless, to Prince Arel, it was of little consequence, as his present self wouldn't be easily vanquished. Several days had passed since Prince Arel's meeting with the king. Now, we find him astride a horse, grinning with excitement as he reflects on this being his first time venturing so far from the concubine's palace. and on a real horse, not a rocking one. As the wind brushes against him, he revels in his newfound sense of freedom. Arel believes he has earned it, given the tireless efforts that transformed him into an unexpected workaholic homebody. He reminisces about his past adventures, traversing the globe and even the entire universe in search of formidable opponents. Yet today, he's content with the simple pleasure of riding a horse. At that moment, Kanya calls for him to slow down, surprised by Arel's equestrian prowess. Internally, the prince thanks her for this excursion, and outwardly, he credits the horse's intelligence for his swift riding. Curious, Arel glances back and inquires about the numerous escort knights accompanying them on such a brief journey. He can't help but notice the presence of several formidable warriors. Kanya softly admits she didn't request such a substantial entourage, but before she can finish her thought, Prince Arel interjects, reminding her of her status as a princess and how safety must always be the priority, even if it means sacrificing some of their freedom. Suddenly, Prince Arel senses an ominous aura emanating from the path ahead. He wonders what kind of magical energy it could be and brings his horse to a halt. Kanya asks him what's wrong, and Arel advises they turn back, suspecting that monsters inhabit the nearby forest. Kanya is puzzled and wonders how he knows this, so the prince makes an excuse, explaining that he has a keen sixth sense and can't shake the bad feeling that there's a trap waiting for them. Kanya regards him with disbelief, and without warning, she charges forward toward the source of the ominous aura. Taken aback, Prince Arel calls for the escort knights to guarantee Princess Kanya's safe return. However, one of the knights sheepishly clarifies that they are indeed on the right path, and beyond the forest is the princess's training ground. Baffled, Prince Arel inquires about this training ground but ultimately accepts the situation and hesitantly follows the confident Kanya as she takes the lead. This all started a few days ago. We saw Princess Kanya and Prince Arel sharing a meal when Kanya mentioned her upcoming trip and invited Arel to join her. She empathizes with the frustration of being confined to the palace and shares her love for hunting and embarking on adventures. As they ride side by side, Kanya explains to Arel that traveling is practice, and practice is traveling, extolling the fun it entails. Arel, however, considers it more akin to torture. Kanya gazes at him, expressing her belief that he would have joined her even if it were for practice because he believes in her. As his sister, she promises to protect him from any monsters they may encounter. Arel simply smiles, admiring the coolness that Kanya exudes. Moments later, they arrive at their destination. Prince Arel begins outlining the operation. Some troops will lure the monsters to one side, Princess Kanya will break through, and the escort team will handle the monsters driven toward the trap. By working together, they aim to use time and energy efficiently to maximize the princess's abilities. The operation commences, and the guards gather 20 orcs for Princess Kanya to face in combat. Grasping her sword firmly, she dashes toward the orcs, slicing the first one at its neck and knocking back another beside it. Prince Arel watches, initially skeptical that Kanya could defeat an orc during her first practice. Yet, with a hint of envy, he recognizes her strength, admiring not only her swordsmanship but also her composure. Kanya charges from one orc to another, her courage and spirit radiating from every fiber of her being. Her performance is enough to overwhelm everyone with excitement, witnessing the incredible feats of a 16-year-old, and so the training continues for several days, showcasing Kanya's remarkable abilities. During the night, as they sit in front of a fireplace, Prince Arel asks if Kanya is tired. She replies that she's fine and actually wishes she could have fought a bit more. Arel cautions her not to overdo it, explaining that mistakes often occur when one is caught off guard and recalls a past life where such a mistake cost him dearly. As Kanya and Arel enjoy each other's company, Kanya explains how delicious the meat skewer is. "I hope it's not orc meat." Prince Arel observes her smile, noting that she looks like a typical 16-year-old girl, and as the night goes on, he asks why she wants to be so strong. Surprised by the question, Princess Kanya answers solemnly that, as a princess, no matter how skilled she becomes with a sword, no one will truly be happy with her choice. They may think it's just a phase, and she'll eventually give up and marry someone she doesn't know. Arel recognizes that in their aristocratic society, political marriages are customary, and Kanya has already reached the age for such arrangements. In the world they inhabit, it's not unusual for a princess to become engaged for the sake of politics. Interrupting Arel's thoughts, Kanya declares her hatred for that kind of life, which surprises Arel. She admires how he makes a lot of money doing what he's good at, contributes to the kingdom, and gains recognition. Kanya wants to be recognized for who she is and what she's good at, wishing to contribute to the Kinchester family with her skills, not through marriage. With determination in her eyes, she asserts that she will decide her own fate. Prince Arel smiles, approving of her mentality, and confidently says that she'll surely change her destiny. Princess Kanya smiles in agreement, aspiring to be like Arel, then realizes they'll return home the next day. Prince Arel concurs with Princess Kanya that their journey has been incredible, and he's pleased to have accompanied her. As darkness descends and the view shifts away from the forest, a fleeting glimpse of the winged-tailed beast is revealed. It is often said that the early bird catches the worm, but in this case, Kanya was capturing orcs. When an orc uprooted a tree and charged toward Kanya, she quickly retaliated with a swift slash to its torso, effortlessly vanquishing the foe. Onlookers gazed in admiration as Princess Kanya continued to hunt orcs even on her way back home. They believed that no one could stop her, and the orcs who had been hiding were easily apprehended. At that moment, Prince Arel called out to Kanya, urging her to cease her pursuit. He reminded her that they needed to return home promptly, and that there were no more orcs left to catch. Glancing around, Kanya found herself surrounded by the defeated bodies of her enemies, and happily agreed to head back. However, she noticed her horse appeared unwell, its appearance peculiar, and seemingly fatigued from the day's battles. Arel suggested they share a horse for the journey home, while Kanya's steed would be sent to the magicians for healing and care. As Kanya mounted the horse, she offered to take the reins, and Arel agreed wholeheartedly, aware that she was more skilled at riding than he was. Their journey back home began with Kanya and Arel setting the pace, and the guards trailing closely behind. Nevertheless, nothing ever goes according to plan. Arel sensed something amiss and glanced up at the sky. Kanya inquired about his concern, but Arel couldn't pinpoint the issue. He could only sense it, something lurking above the clouds. Focusing his chi on his eyes, Arel concentrated on discerning the mysterious presence. To his shock, he discovered a wyvern. Alarmed, Prince Arel took control of the reins and told Kanya to hold onto him tightly as he prepared to flee. Turning to the guards trailing them, he warned them of the wyvern like Paul Revere and instructed them to seek refuge in the nearby woods. However, the guards were incredulous and unconvinced, as they had chosen this area specifically because the local lord, known for hunting wyverns, had assured them that none remained. That's when the red flag was raised, and the one who said it was to be dealt with. So to our greatest shock, a wyvern swooped down, seized the guard by the shoulders, and dragged him into the sky. As everyone witnessed this, they started to scream and scatter, taken aback by the presence of the very creature they had been assured was absent. Prince Arel, with a clear head, took control of the reins. Princess Kanya worriedly glanced back to assess the situation, only to realize that it wasn't just one wyvern. There were many. Arel turned to confirm her observation and was puzzled by the sight, as wyverns typically live solitary lives. Yet, the creatures pursued the guards en masse, not as predators stalking prey, but in a merciless slaughter. What Arel found especially peculiar was the wyvern's use of potent poison magic, such as acid breath. which only augmented their already impressive might. Consequently, the landscape behind Arel and Cania resembled a lopsided battlefield filled with dread and despair. While Cania surveyed the multitude of falling guards, Arel implored her not to look back and to cling tighter to him. Just as a wyvern spotted them and initiated its pursuit, it began charging an acid breath attack. However, a mage intervened just in time, deflecting the assault with a fireball spell. The magicians who had been accompanying them from the rear now provided cover for Arel and Cania's escape, skillfully maneuvering through the chaotic scene to avoid collision. Anxiously, Prince Arel realized they couldn't keep running indefinitely. Wyverns were resistant to magic below Class 4, and the magicians would soon find themselves outmatched. With two wyverns closing in, Arel made a split-second decision, converting his mana energy into a bullet. Danjigong! Headshot, and just like that, he eliminated one wyvern and then another, giving alone mages all the credit in defeating them. However, their escape was far from complete. A wyvern abruptly landed before the duo, obstructing their path. As they prepared for an imminent assault, Cania cried out for her mother. In that moment, Cania's personal guard emerged, swiftly cleaving the wyvern in half with a single stroke of her sword. She then urged them to seek refuge in the nearby woods. Breathing a sigh of relief, Arel admired the guard's extraordinary abilities and hoped she could provide them with a much-needed reprieve. Prince Arel suddenly heard an unexpected voice transmission. "You hold up pretty well." As he scanned his surroundings, searching for the source, a dark-robed man appeared before them, laughing ominously. Prince Arel immediately sensed something suspicious about the mage standing in front of him, who was holding a peculiar-looking stick. Just as Prince Arel inquired about the mysterious man's identity, the dark-robed mage began channeling magic without warning. Lightning cannon! Caught off guard by this unanticipated attack, Prince Arel had expected an introduction rather than an assault. As the dark mage unleashed his attack, Prince Arel skillfully dodged and shielded Princess Cania. Unfortunately, the guards behind them were not as lucky. When the magical onslaught ceased, Arel looked back to find all the guards fallen, smoke still rising from their lifeless bodies. The dark mage remarked on Princess Cania's evasion, expressing surprise. Prince Arel, taken aback by the sudden conversation, realized the mage had addressed Cania by name and began to wonder if she had been his target all along. With a sinister chuckle, the dark mage taunted them, claiming their efforts had merely provided entertainment. As he prepared to cast another spell, raising his staff, he insisted that escape was futile. A look of dismay crossed Prince Arel's face as he sensed malevolent energy emanating from the staff. Both Cania and Arel felt a growing sense of unease, and as Cania surveyed the scene, she noticed something happening to the corpses of the fallen. A guard shouted that they were moving, and even the slain wyvern began to stir. Witnessing this, Prince Arel exclaimed that they were now facing the undead. Just then the dark mage issued a chilling command to the undead, ordering them to eliminate the second princess and teach the arrogant royal family a lesson about the power of the Dark Church. However, he suddenly sensed something amiss, though he couldn't pinpoint its origin. Prince Arel refused to stand idly by while his sister Cania was threatened. With determination in his eyes, he wondered who would dare to target her. Drawing upon his Danjigong, he aimed directly at the dark mage's torso and unleashed a barrage of attacks, causing the dark mage to scream in agony and collapse to the ground. Princess Cania, bewildered, asked Arel what had just transpired. He explained that the dark mage had likely suffered the side effects of forcefully using more magic than he could handle. Although the dark mage was defeated, his commanding spell on the undead remained active. The guards urged Princess Cania and Prince Arel to flee and seek safety, as they took on the remainder of the undead forces. Before departing, Prince Arel reassured the guards that he trusted them to handle the rest of the battle. As night fell and they fled into the forest, Prince Arel and Princess Cania sought refuge beneath a cliff, setting up a makeshift camp. Concerned for their safety, Cania found comfort in Arel's reassurance that the undead would soon perish now that the dark mage had been defeated. He added that their guards should be on their way, and she had no reason to worry. Attempting to start a fire, Arel was questioned by Cania about how he had acquired such a skill, given his constant busyness in the castle. Arel nervously explained the principle of frictional heat generated by rubbing two flammable objects together. Had Cania not been watching so intently, he would have simply gathered mana and converted it into heat energy to ignite the fire, sparing his hands from discomfort. Finally, Arel's persistence paid off, and the fire roared to life. Cania began to wonder if it would have been better had she not attended the training, but Arel reassured her that the situation was more like an unexpected accident and not her fault. She asked if he had been scared during the ordeal. Realizing he had been acting too mature, Arel decided to behave his age, admitting that as representatives of the kingdom, they had to endure fear, and the wyverns were indeed terrifying. Seeing Arel's vulnerability, Cania took his hand to comfort him, and thanked him for standing by her side during such a harrowing day. Prince Arel acknowledged that Princess Cania had been frightened from the start of the battle, and was heartbroken that those escorting her had lost their lives in vain. He understood the constant threat of assassination faced by the royal family, but he also knew that this was Cania's first time experiencing such danger, making it difficult for her to accept this reality. Despite the challenges, Prince Arel remained focused on their primary goal, returning home safely. Suddenly, a fierce battle erupted overhead between a wyvern and a griffin. Princess Cania wondered why they were fighting so late at night, and Prince Arel, observing a nest on the cliff, deduced that the wyvern was after the griffin's cub. The wyvern managed to bite the griffin's neck, causing it to crash into the cliffside. Alarmed, Arel and Cania hastily retreated to avoid being struck by falling rocks. As the dust surrounding them settled, they saw the wyvern depart, likely deterred by the scent of wyvern blood on their bodies. However, Arel discovered Cania had vanished from his side, leaving him momentarily stunned. He quickly spotted her near the fallen griffin and warned her of the danger, but she assured him it was safe since the griffin had perished. Arel conceded that there was no curbing Cania's curiosity. As Cania gazed at the fallen creature, she wondered what they should do with it. Prince Arel hesitantly asked if she planned to make a grave for it, but she retorted that she was concerned about the griffin's cub, which surprised Arel. With a somber tone, he stated there was only one option. They had to let nature take its course, despite how cruel it might seem. However, Princess Cania misunderstood, thinking Arel meant they should raise the cub, which left him even more taken aback. As Cania noticed the guards approaching, one of them expressed relief at finding the pair safe and sound. As they drew nearer, Princess Cania greeted them warmly, delighting in their reunion. Cania's guard added that, fortunately, no further casualties had occurred after the undead magic spell had been lifted. Much to the guards' astonishment, they saw Cania cradling a griffin in her arms. Prince Arel, somewhat uneasy, suggested that they had arrived at an opportune moment and should intervene to prevent Cania from adopting the griffin. However, Cania's guard argued that doing so would be impossible. A week had passed, and life had mostly returned to normal, except for a new addition to the family. Roused from his sleep by the griffin cub fly, Prince Arel greeted the latest member of their household. He picked up the small creature, and even though he couldn't sleep in like before, he found it hard not to forgive the cub for its endearing face and well-behaved nature. The story then flashes back to the events of that fateful night. Arel instructed the guards to escort Cania to a resting place while he secured the area, ensuring that wild beasts wouldn't disturb the fallen griffin's remains. As the guards busied themselves with setting up camp, Prince Arel carefully sliced open the mother griffin's chest with a sword, extracting its magical core. Arel knew that possessing the core would enable him to tame the newborn griffin. As Arel played with Fly, he noticed Princess Cania arriving at the castle. She hastily exited her carriage and was greeted with enthusiasm by the excited griffin cub. While Cania enjoyed her time with Fly, Prince Arel learned of a wanted order issued across the kingdom. A bounty had been placed on the Dark Church, the group responsible for attacking the princess, with rewards offered for information on their whereabouts. Prince Arel remarked that the Dark Church wasn't the only group opposing the kingdom. He suddenly had a realization, wondering if he had been too preoccupied with material wealth. A nearby guard overheard him and inquired about his meaning, but Arel dismissed the matter and sent the guard away. As Princess Cania finally caught Fly, Prince Arel wondered why anyone would target her when she didn't wield significant influence or hold a central position of power. Regardless, she was still a princess and part of his family. He contemplated whether he should become a sword master and aimed to be an aura expert by his late 20s. Eager to change the subject, Arel approached Cania and asked if she wanted to do something fun. Intrigued, Cania inquired about his plan. Moments later, we see swords clashing and a hint of mana surging from their blades. Princess Cania takes note of this, and before she can finish her thought, they exchange one final attack and back away from each other. Cania excitedly asks about her experience, and Arel delightedly reveals that he utilized his aura. He secretly takes pleasure in the success of his scheme and her falling for it. Princess Cania eagerly asks if she can learn it too and wonders where Arel studied it. He responds vaguely, saying it was something like that, and proceeds to explain that using the aura relies primarily on the brain. Disheartened, Cania assumes that she can't use aura if she isn't intelligent. However, Arel comforts her, clarifying that it's not the case. Cania retorts that it's only because Arel is a genius, but he further explains that she simply needs to learn how to control the aura with her brain, and he'll teach her. Thrilled at the prospect of learning, Cania asks if she'll be able to master it quickly. Arel assures her that if she follows his method, it won't take long. He privately reflects on the reason for her accelerated progress. He has been secretly transferring mana into Cania. Arel instructs her to concentrate and follow his guidance. Unbeknownst to them, Cania's guard listens in on their conversation from behind closed doors. Weeks went by, and whenever Cania visited Fly, she trained in both swordsmanship and aura with Arel. As a result, she became an aura user at an astonishing speed. Princess Cania gazed at her sword in awe, asking if this was the power of aura. Prince Arel congratulated her, but reminded her that it was just the beginning of her journey. One unexpected side effect of their training was that Fly had temporarily grown after being exposed to the potent energy from aura practice. With Fly resting on Arel's shoulder, he complained about the griffin's weight, even if he were to shrink back to his original size. Prince Arel told Cania that mastering aura was only the first step. They would need to train harder to control strength and movement more smoothly, and use aura to its fullest potential. She may even be able to use aura while riding Fly. Princess Cania chuckled at Arel's vivid imagination, but he insisted he was serious. Cania, petting Fly, asked if what Arel said was true. In his mind, Prince Arel believed that the day would come soon. Suddenly, the door burst open, and an announcement was made that His Majesty had arrived, taking Arel and Cania by surprise. Prince Arel wondered why the king was present, as he should be preoccupied with preparations in the north, and surely wasn't just there for some fresh air. The king approached with Lady Livena beside him, and Prince Arel respectfully greeted His Majesty. The king mentioned that he had heard the two had been practicing swordsmanship lately. Prince Arel downplayed their training, saying it had only been a little, and that he had mainly been working on various experiments and trying to tame the griffin for potential border defense later. The king's satisfied expression indicated his anticipation of witnessing Arel's achievements in diverse fields. At that moment, two servants approached, carrying a large chest. They set it down, and both Kanya and Arel were surprised by its contents. With a stern look, the king told Prince Arel to give the sword a try. After all, it was a one-of-a-kind weapon that had been crafted especially for him. Lady Livana interjected, arguing that Arel was still too young to wield such a sword, but the king chuckled, explaining that he didn't expect Arel to actually wield it. As its owner, he should at least touch it. Before them, Arel casually picked up the sword, astonishing everyone. He contemplated whether he should begin practicing swordsmanship in earnest from that moment forward.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next page.